I hope you've had a chance to listen to part one of this interview on BizBytes. Stay tuned now for part two. Welcome to BizBytes, brought to you by ComTogether, helping businesses like yours build their brand through telling amazing stories to engage and grow audiences on multiple platforms. Marg, I wanted to ask you a little bit about your background, because we've talked to where we've sort of got to and where we're going to in some respects. But tell me about you back in your childhood. What is it that you wanted to be back then?
Well, when I was 16, I wanted to be an interior decorator. But if I think about it, when I was in year seven, it was Form 1 then, because I am a bit older than most of probably your listening audience. It was called Form 1 back then. I was very passionate about being on stage. Put me in front of a microphone. It's very hard for me to get off. I love being on stage. Whether it's even when I was 6, I used to get all these little blankets, and then have to do the quick change because I wanted to be every character in the play. And I get really pissed off when I was going to the church services, and I was owning a donkey or something really insignificant. I was like, why can't I be Mary? Yeah, make a good Mary. And no, you'll be a shepherd. No, I was really happy. So I think in some respects, I was always wanting to, perform to some extent. And it's funny because even when Mum said, you've got to be a school teacher because they look at the holidays they get, and I didn't want to be a school teacher. I want to be an interior designer. And yet I became a very good teacher. And I think I have an ESFJ, which is 49% one, 51% the other, some sort of split personality. But to be fair, if you look at that up, they say they're people. They're very good with people. They are good nurses, they're good teachers, and you'll probably find them organising parties and on stage and da 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 da. So I guess in my DNA there is a bit of that in me. Because when we had a 40th high school reunion in 2019, Horsham High School, and everyone was laughing about how I was the organizer. I was organising everybody to get together, connecting everybody, making sure that it was, whether it was the talent quest, because we had back in Form 1, we came second because I organised the costumes, organised the mothers to do the hair, organised everybody to get a ride with the mothers. I organised the mothers to make sure all the other mothers voted for us. It's just sales and marketing and event management all rolled into one. I don't know, but I just did it at 12.
And where does that come from though? Was that mum and dad, or where did that sort of intuition come from?
Given the fact that I was born into domestic violence and dad's drinking went from bad to worse, it certainly didn't come from my childhood, because my childhood was spent just surviving and trying to, I never really got to sleep in my bed. We never had a birthday party or Christmas because we don't know whether dad was how he was going to be. So there was no bringing friends home. Home wasn't safe. And so what happened was in 2000, I think it was 2017 or 2018, I came across a book called The Tipping Point by Malcolm Gladwell. He's one of the best-selling authors in the States. And he came up with this theory about there are these people, 3 rare personality types that can really bring major change and influence to the world through the spreading of either ideas or people or some other influence, right? And he said the 3 people are salespeople, mavens, and connectors. And they can bring about change. They can make big things happen. So in the connectors, you can actually break it down into 3 categories, and I'm a blend of all 3. There is what we call a connector enabler. They're the people who assemble. So like, let's say you're launching a business, and you need an audience, or you need a market, or you need people to come on board and buy. Well, connectors just are very naturally good with people, and they know people, and they remember people. They remember conversations and what they were wearing. And don't you remember when they have good memories, and people like them for that, right? And they make people feel instantly comfortable. So the connection enabler is good for galvanizing the troops, making big things happen. That's the enabler. Then there's also the executor. So you could have an idea, but someone's got to execute it. So we have someone who brings the people together, but we've got to have someone who can take the project. And this is what I do a lot, is I do a lot of business development strategy, implementation, open doors, make it happen. That's the executor. And the other one is the connector. I'm going to call it information broker because that's the only way I can explain it. But it's like they can sit down and workshop an idea with you, but they also know people that you need to meet that would be able to take that idea and sort of unpack it in so a way that it's going to work. Because we have ideas, we don't normally test them, we don't do our market research. But a connector is someone who goes, you need to speak to such and such because he knows, well, first of all, he knows people that you need to meet to open doors. And they also seem to know sort of information, because the great thing about connectors, as opposed to networkers, they're all about themselves. We're not going to talk about them. But the thing about connectors is because they're great listeners and they like to be out and about, they have a really good understanding and information about the world. So when someone comes to me and says, oh, I hate networking, I couldn't think of anything worse. Like, we were having this conversation, and I don't think Keith would mind me saying it was Keith, because he talks about it all the time, that he says, I wouldn't want to go to Shepparton, couldn't think of anything worse than going to Shepparton and staying overnight with my wife's friends. And because he said, Marg, if I was going to Shepparton, what would be the point? And I go, do you know all the things that you see on the way? You see things that, how come there's not enough traffic? Doesn't seem like there's the shops are, why is the shops closed? It's the other day I was going right out to Walk to McLeod. I'd never been to McLeod to an appointment. I'd never been through past North East Link. So my perception of Melbourne is limited if I stay in my area. But if I go out, I see and I learn and I absorb and I feel the energy and the mood. That's the other thing about the domestic violence, Anthony, is that given the fact that, Dad would come home sometimes and you'd be sitting there and you're just a bit nervous because you don't know if he's going to switch into Jekyll or Hyde. And Mum had this sort of little wink she would give us. It was time to exit left, just pretend you're normal and run out the back, get back into the dark and meet her, cross the highway and meet her there, because you have to run to safety, right? But what that taught me is how to read a room, how to read people. And I'm very, very good at that from that experience. And, all the things that you miss when you're too plugged into computers and just not really understanding that there's so much you're missing of your life when you are plugged in.
I think it's interesting. All those things that you say, I was sitting there thinking to myself that it's no surprise that you were so organized as well, because in that sort of environment, you needed to have strategies on where to go. So you were being organized and having that and having the foresight to be able to do that. But also it comes from the balance of those two things is also, it's not just reading the room and having that, but it's choosing the right stories in order to feed into whatever environment it is. And that's truly the part of connecting, which I think is absolutely huge. And I was thinking as you were talking as well that, recently I was on a lucky enough to be had a holiday, and I was in part of that holiday, I was in Scotland, and kind of went to the Isle of Skye, which I've mentioned it before on the podcast, but anyone that's ever thinking of somewhere to go, it is one of the most beautiful places on earth. Absolutely must go place. And we were there, and And one of the great things about being around there was there's lots of these little cottage industry places that the truth is they're not really making much money, and they're not really there to make much money. They're there because they love being there, and there are some things that they can do along the way, and the connections you make with those people that own those businesses. And I think we can all recall stories where we've been on holidays somewhere and you have a connection with someone in that way. And it is because they know how to reach out to you and to engage. And it's not a sales pitch. It is truly from an engagement point of view. But that sort of circles back to everything that you've been talking about. And I wanted to ask you about this is the importance of community, because I've long been talking about this prior to COVID, that I think that there's been this pull back towards what truly community means. And I think COVID probably exacerbated that need in some respects. And I think in this, as you talk about this plugged in environment in which we're living at the moment, that the need to unplug and to truly connect with people, that's a human instinct. And that's something that there's more and more a need for. And why, if you can actually achieve that in your business, because I've long said that businesses operate within a community. That community is not necessarily a geographic location, but it's a community of people who are potentially interested in what it is that you offer. And if you can establish a true connection within that community, then you have gone a long way to winning that battle. And yet, that is something that is left these days to, we've just got set and forget emails that go out to people automatically. We've got this and that it's all automatic, and we'll grab a certain small percentage of people. I fight with that all the time. So I'm interested in your take on community and where you see that going.
Unfortunately, I think that people talk about it and they don't know how to build it. Unfortunately, we talk about it takes a village to raise a child. We talk about you really need to get a following. And, then we have this conversation around, is your following your real community? And what is community? Like the definition of real community. And real community is actually looking out for one another, is my sense of community. So when I think about community, like in my apartment block, obviously I moved in during lockdown, and as soon as lockdown was announced that we were open forever, I was the one who had the first Melbourne Cup barbecue, followed by the Christmas party, followed by my 60th birthday, and then the monthly drinks. And then I've taken that one step further to a recent, I was down in the storage cage in the basement, and I found some books. I thought, what are they doing in the storage cage? I'm not going to read them again. So I took them out and I put them in the foyer of the apartment block and started the community library. And people were just really excited about that, because now I'm going, just bring your books, let's share. Sharing is caring. And then it went one step further, because I had an encounter with his Iranian couple that were moving in, and the lift wasn't working. And so when I found out that he was a FIFO worker and she had no car, didn't speak much English, I just felt I had to look after her, right? So what you're looking at today and your viewers can't see my beautiful eyes, because she has done an eye tattoo free of charge for Marg, because I'm just a good person. And my eyelashes, she did there, and there was 2 hours last night. I've saved myself about $500. But the fact is that I don't do it for that reason. That's just what comes back as a sense of community. Now let's take this to, so that's in my apartment block. And each time that I'm sitting there in my apartment block and there's some sort of gathering that we have with the drinks, whatever, there's people in the apartment block that got police people, we've got people who are hairdressers. She's dating someone who's a Werribee vet, from the zoo. This is where you do business, in your apartment block, or if you knew your neighbours well. It's what business people don't understand. they're not necessarily, you don't have to go, oh, we'll just do the email campaign and let's just see how many low-hanging fruit we get. This is where you're missing the opportunity to really get to know your neighbours who, once they've found out what you're doing, they really want to help you, right? And they might know someone or themselves. Like example was when I launched the Wealth and Wellbeing for Women for Jack Henderson, which is addressing the over 50 homelessness of Australian women that you can't see. Well, of course, I put out to my apartment block, come along. Now that's a business event, but that doesn't mean that they're not interested. So when I look at community in terms of, and this is where I go back to business strategy. I was explaining about this to someone I met for the first time in a cafe in Brighton this morning. I said, when I am working on a business development strategy with a new client, I have to get to know who they are and connect with them first, not what they do, who they are, right? Because then you get to their why and their purpose, and you get to know all about them. Then you lay over top of that what it is they do and what they're trying to achieve. All right, that's the second clue about what I would. So if I'm going to do a strategy with them, it's the second clue. So when it was Jack, I just wanted to know about Jack. So when Jack Henderson was launching Wealth and Wellbeing for Women, it had been sitting on the shelf since 2008. And then I was sitting there going, and he was talking passionately about this woman from India who he had helped because she was fleeing domestic violence. Oh, bing, up goes my radar. And how he helped turn her life around. And now she owns her own home. She's working as a top manager in NAB. And he said, I did that through the ability to help her out by, the fact that I've been a property advisor, I know about money, la, 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 la. And then I'm sitting there and I'm thinking to myself when I'm talking to him, I'm thinking, what's going on out there in the world right now? Oh, we've got a housing crisis. Bing. Step 3, the clue of relevance. So now when I'm doing a business development strategy, I said, you want to get more business because you're a property advisor, buyer's agent, I get that. But if you go out and say, I'm here and I know a lot about property, so does everybody else. But what if we were to launch Wealth and Wellbeing for Women and we just get the community together to discuss this issue, and you can give your perspective, you can tell your story about the friend you helped from India, but you just give your perspective on how you could help this situation. You're not pitching, you're not prospecting, and people are coming to your event as your community for something other than what you sell, your product or service. And so now you're not prospecting, and now you're elevating yourself above every other property buyer's advocate or advisor in the industry. So that's sort of how you can take and build a community, and you're bringing them into you like an attraction marketing magnet, because you're the leader, you're the thought leader, you're the action taker.
It's really interesting. It's really interesting when you say that. I love it. And I know we're so much on the same page as far as this stuff is concerned. And it's interesting as well that I've found myself more recently, as I mentioned to you earlier, that I am helping people publish their own podcasts, doing my podcast here, but I'm helping lots of other people publish their podcasts. And that has happened because people heard what I was doing and said, hey, I'd love to do the same thing. Can you help? And I wasn't actually pitching to do that at that point. And it's now become its own little business that's happening there. But it's really about that. It's about, inviting people in this case, to listen and enjoy the conversation. And if they think they want to be part of this conversation, or they want to have their own and lead their own, we can help make that happen. But it happens because of that connection. And it's what I've always loved about this medium. My background, as listeners would know, is in radio originally. And my fascination with radio started, back when I was quite young. And it is that ability not only to paint pictures, but to connect with people and to make you feel like you are there, that you're either a fly in the wall of this wonderful conversation. And I hope that's what people have got from this one that we're having today. Uh, or it's that the person on the other end could be you. And whether that's me or
Yeah.
the guest that you're feeling that connection with, it doesn't really matter. If you feel as though you're talking to that, and I think that is the best way. I mean, the best way to engage with an audience is not to try and talk to everybody. It's to try and talk to one person. And if you can make a difference to that one person and truly connect with that one person, whether you are doing it directly because you are actually literally talking to them, or whether you're using a medium like this and you're talking to them indirectly, that connection can lead to real change, can lead to all sorts of things. And whether it's buying from you or from someone else, if it makes a positive difference to someone's life, then how cool is that? And I hope
Yeah.
that that's what people have got out of this conversation that we've been having about connection. That for some people sitting there now, and even if it's just one person, the lights have come on and gone, I can do this, then great. And we'd love to hear from it, by the way. If that has happened, do write in and let us know. And we can maybe talk about it in a future episode. Um, we have to cut things off in a moment or two, but I did want to finish up by asking you a question that I do try and ask all of my guests on the podcast. It's when someone comes to work with you, they invariably have an aha kind of moment. What is that sort of aha moment that people have that you wish that people would know in advance so that they're flocking to you now?
The aha moment happens when, we just get that sort of workshopping the idea, whether it's a business idea together, and then we just get excited like two little kids in a candy store. And go, oh my God, this would be good. We've got to do this. We've got to do this. We've got to do this together. And I can do this, and you can do that, and da, 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 da. That's the beauty of it. It's the excitement and the creativity and the vision that comes together, the collaboration that comes, and it's usually I go, okay, but I I don't. It's not like everybody wants to work with me. And as you said right at the beginning, I don't know if we had that in the other recording or this recording, but you were saying they didn't want to work with you now, but that isn't to say that they won't come back and seek you out in the future. So yes, I can get excited. Yes, I go, oh my God, this would be great. We could work together. How much is that? Right. And then you go, well, this is my fees, blah, blah, blah. And then you go, I can't afford that. Well, what can you afford? Let's get a little bit of Marg. Let's just get a little bit of me. Let's just get you started. Right. So it's that infectiousness, I think, is the aha moment that people have when they actually got someone that they go, she gets me. She actually gets me because the way that she's been asking questions, the way she's been listening, the responses are on point. That is that aha moment that people go, right, she's the one. And you know the best thing about that? That's not selling, it's positioning yourself. It's positioning
Mm.
yourself as the natural choice of the people because everybody's got the internet, they can check everybody out. But when they go, you know what, that person is cheaper, but that person's got my back, right? It's funny how it works.
You are so spot on, and it's something that I've been sort of talking about as well for the longest time. It's why we do the podcast and why we've done lots of other things in terms of putting stuff out there. Because if you're foolish enough to think that people aren't looking you up beforehand, then you're wrong. You never, and I've all been fond of saying, you never know what you're missing by having poor communication. If you don't allow people the opportunity to get to know you beforehand, they may never engage and you'll never know you've missed that opportunity. It's the people that put themselves out there that allow you to get to know them that you think, I actually really want to work with this person. I need to find an excuse to work with this person. And that is the ultimate, is that people are, that that actually cancels out the sales process, a lot of it, because people are coming to you because they want to have something to do with you. It's a question of what they will buy, not whether they will buy. And that is a huge differentiator. And I think if you can create that true connection with your audience, that allows you that opportunity. So, Marg, thank you so much for being an amazing guest. We've talked through lots of different things here, and I hope that people listening in genuinely have made a connection. And we will, of course, include all of the information how to connect with you, or at least start a connection with you, and where to find you through various things. We'll include that in our show notes as we always do. Marg, thank you so much for being an amazing guest on Biz Bites.
And for people who can't see because it's a podcast, Anthony and I are just grinning from ear to ear, and it's such a lovely, because we can see each other on this Zoom that we're doing. But it's so lovely to be able to connect and smile. Always get the smile back. Thanks so much for having me, Anthony.
And everyone, stay tuned, of course, for the next episode of Biz Bites. Biz Bites is brought to you by Together for all your marketing needs, so you can build your brand, engage audiences on multiple platforms. Go to comtogether.com.au, follow the links to book an appointment for a free consultation.